89, Kevin Roche.
I'm live. I'm live.
Oh, hi.
And as you can see, he did bring back ornamentation. All those silver accents in the windows, those are called mullions. Look up to the roof line at the corners and you see some nods to early Corinthian columns, but albeit in a more streamlined, modern version. Now, Roche was born in Dublin, and he came over to Chicago to study under Mies. So it's always quite interesting when the student and the teacher take polar opposite approaches to their design philosophy. Roche was also one of the first recipients of the Pritzker Prize. That's kind of like the Nobel Prize in architecture. And he was awarded it in part due to his talent for a very wide variety of expressions in his designs. Now, some of you may have noticed off to the left, a pathway hugging our river. This is our Riverwalk. And this section was completed between 2014 and 2016, headed up by Ross Barney and Associates. Now, this is a 1¼ mile or 2 kilometer stroll. They'll connect you to the lakefront path behind you to the confluence ahead of you. The confluence is where the 3 branches of our river come together. Now, the spaces between the bridges, we call these rooms, and every room has a different theme. If you look to your right, you won't be surprised. This room is called the marina. We also have the jetty, the amphitheater, and the like. If you have time after the cruise, I would highly encourage you to check it out. You will be met with some beautiful public art and public monuments, and as you can see, plenty of places to grab a bite to eat. For our next building, we're going to stay on your left. Look beyond those 2 shiny, glassy buildings to the very first light tan, stone-colored building. The one that has the tall tower set back on its roof line and 2 shorter towers in front of it. Almost looks like a big armchair or a throne. This is the LaSalle Wacker Building, 1930, Halliburton and Root. And this is your first Art Deco building of the tour. Note how much this building emphasizes its height through those uninterrupted span of stone running vertically between the windows. And now another feature of this building that has everything to do with when it was built, nothing to do with Art Deco, is that tall setback tower on its roof line. In 1923, our city council passed an ordinance to address what's known as the canyon effect. So those of you that have visited the Wall Street section of New York City would know there are some streets in that neighborhood that literally never see the light of day due to overbuilding. And we wanted to try to avoid that best we could here in Chicago. So the ordinance stated buildings could rise to a certain level, could continue to rise thereafter, but that section had to be set or pushed back. And that let sunlight and air into the buildings and sunlight down to our streets and sidewalks. Now, our next 2 buildings are going to also be on your left. They're going to be right next to each other, both designed by firm KPF, and both illustrating what's known as contextualism. That is when some aspect of the design of a building gives a nod or pays homage to something in its context. So for our first building, just after this bridge, you're going to look up to your left. To the building with 2 white domes on its roof line. This is 325 West Wacker, 1985. And if you look closely at the base of the domes, you'll see they're connected by a white lattice work piece of ornamentation. And if that looks all to you like a bridge, then the designers did their job, because that's meant to be a nod to the many bridges spanning the Chicago River.
No.
If you look about a quarter of the way down from the roof line, you might be able to make out a very large urn. And that's a nod to Frank Lloyd Wright, a local architect who famously would have those large urns, particularly in the residential projects he designed on the porches. So that's a nod to one of our local luminaries. Once we pass under this bridge, look to the same building entrance on Upper Wacker Drive. You're going to see there's an American flag planted over that entrance, and the flag is planted in the middle of a piece of ornamentation that looks a bit like a porthole. So a nod to its waterside location. Now the very next building next to it, the gorgeous curved blue-green glass number. That's 333 West Wacker, 1983. And the first nod it's giving to its context is the color of its glass, reflecting the color of the Chicago River.
I did some.
Well, with the exception of St. Patrick's Day and about a week afterwards, a bright Kelly green, but it's more typically this blue-green color, due in part to the type of algae that live in these waterways. Now, some of you may have noticed the captain is ever so gently steering the boat in response to a bend in the river, and that curved facade is another nod to its context, the bend upon which it was erected.
Correct.
Once you pass under this bridge, look to the base of this same building. You're going to see the first couple floors are covered in stone massing. And that's because that's where they're hiding the mechanicals, which is a little unusual. We tend to stick the mechanicals up high on the roof line. But if you look to the directly right of the building, you're going to see yellow train tracks. That's our L track. There was concern that noise and vibration from passing trains would make the offices of the first couple floors unmarketable. So they flipped the script, put the mechanicals on the bottom, started the rental offices a few floors up. Well, now we've just entered the confluence, so the place where the three branches of a river come together. And our very next building is straight ahead of the boat. The tall, glassy number with the arch at its base and a mirror image arch on its roof line. This is River Point, 2017, Pickard and Chilton. Now we would consider this contemporary, which is not a style, but rather a time period, specifically year 2000 to present day. And that's because we tend to name architectural styles in retrospect. So if you come back and see me in 15 years, I'll let you know what we're going to call this. Now, contemporary buildings, they can vary a bit. They tend to have two things in common. A light, airy feel, usually through extensive use of glass as seen here, and a razor-sharp focus on sustainability in terms of the use of water, electricity, materials, and the like. Now, it's hard to miss that beautiful sculpture at its base. That's Constellation 2020 by talented artist and architect Santiago Calatrava. Now, thus far on the cruise, I have been pointing out commercial buildings, but as we go to explore a portion of our North Branch, I'm going to point out some residential, specifically those that started out as commercial were later converted for residential use. And this is a process called adaptive reuse, and we love it because it helps preserve our important architecture and it's kinder to the earth. So our first example of adaptive reuse, coming up on your left, the medium rise red brick building. That's Fulton House by Frank Abbott, 1898. This is going to be the oldest building you see on today's tour. Now this building started out life as a cold storage warehouse, and when they went to convert it into residences, headed up by architect Harry Weiss, they ran into a couple challenges. First of all, it was so well insulated, it took 18 months to thaw out. When they went to go remove all that insulation, it filled up the equivalent of 300 semi-truck trailers. And after all that, they found the building lacked in structural integrity, so they had to insert steel rods throughout it to strengthen it up. Now, if everyone looks closely at the Riverside facade, can everyone see those tiny little stars? Those are just little pieces of ornamentation cleverly covering up the ends of those steel rods. Now, Harry Weiss must have liked the neighborhood because the very next building on your left, the glass and steel number with the sloping roof line, that's River Cottages, 1988. Lots of nautical feel to that building with the spiral staircase like you'd see on a cruise ship and private docking. And if you look particularly at the roof line, does everyone see a lot of triangles? That's because Harry Weiss loved to sail. So you're going to find a triangular motif in every Harry Weiss design. So despite what I shared earlier about the criticality of this river to our founding and our growth, we've had kind of an on-again, off-again relationship with it, which I'm hoping the next two buildings will help me illustrate. So if you look to your right, you're going to see a long, low blue and tan building. That's the East Bank Club, Gordon Levin, 1971. When it was first completed in the early 70s, there were no windows on the Riverside facade because this river wasn't much to look at, much less smell in the 70s. So we say that building at the time turned its back on the river. Now compare that by looking to your left. This is Kinsey Park, 2002 by Papa George Haynes. not only faces, but really embraces the river with those beautiful open patios and balconies and a stretch of publicly accessible riverwalk. And this is due to the timing of its development. A few years before its development, our city council sat down, and I'd like to think that they said to each other, maybe, just maybe, if we start to treat this river like an amenity, it will become one. And they passed an ordinance stating that any development on our river, whether brand new or adaptive reuse, must include a stretch of publicly accessible riverwalk. Now, this is an example of an amenity. So anytime there's new development anywhere in our city, the city is in the position to negotiate, say, for a plaza, an arcade, a piece of public art, maybe a small green space. And those amenities not only make city life more livable, they make the buildings around them more accessible and thus appreciated. Shifting over to your right, just after this next bridge, will be another example of adaptive reuse. These are the river lofts. They were completed in 1909. And notice the design of the balconies on this building. They're kind of stuck to the side and held on by high tension wire. So anytime you see this type of balcony on a building here in Chicago, you can be pretty darn sure that building started out as some type of a commercial enterprise and was later converted for residential use. Now, during this conversion, they added a very useful attached parking garage. And notice the facade of the garage, the color and the material matches the original 1909 building. So a great example of very respectful adaptive reuse.
You're getting away.
For our next building, stay on your right. Just after the bridge, you're going to see a small park. And on the other side of that park, you're going to see a white steel and glass building with arrows or chevrons running up the side of it. This is Erie on the Park, 2002 by French architect Lucien Lagrange. And let's talk about the wind force. Another consideration when designing tall buildings is the force or pressure that wind puts on buildings, creating sway. Now, all buildings must sway a little bit. That which doesn't bend breaks, but you don't want the sway so dramatic that it's uncomfortable to either live or work in that space. And so those triangles, what we call triangular trusses running up the side, are doing the job of making for a very rigid, externally supported building that really helps reduce sway produced by wind force. Now, one of the side benefits of using these triangular trusses is because it's externally supported, you don't need any interior support columns. So you've got lots of flexibility when designing your floor plans. Now, the next two buildings I'm going to point out have a relationship to an important historic figure from here in Chicago named Montgomery Ward. And we Chicagoans admire him for a number of reasons. I'm going to talk about one reason now and one towards the end of our cruise. But first and foremost, brilliant entrepreneur and businessman who introduced the innovation of the mail order catalog. And some of you look too young to know what that is. So imagine a huge catalog of products and you plop it on your kitchen counter, you scribble on a postcard what you want, you mail it to the vendor, in a speedy 18 to 24 weeks you get what you ordered. Now, I know that sounds quaint by today's terms, but back then it was frame breaking. No one was really thinking about the rural population that had to travel hours, if not days, to buy the basic necessities of life. No one was taking advantage of all those trains running in and out of our city as well. So he was onto something, and he started out very humbly with a one-page catalog that quickly grew to 1,000 pages thanks to the second innovation he introduced. Your satisfaction guaranteed or your money back. No one had ever had the audacity to make such a promise, but he knew if his customers couldn't see or touch the product, they had to trust in the quality. And this served him and his company in very good stead. In business over 130 years, producing thousands of imitators in their wake. So looking to your right, this tan building with the mauve color appliques is one building associated with them. This was the original administrative offices for the company. completed in 1930. Willis Macaulay was the architect, who also happened to be on staff of the Montgomery Ward Company, so no pressure there for an architect when your client is also your boss. And as you can see, by the design of those balconies, this has since been converted to residential units. Just after the bridge, stay on your right, you're going to see a very long, low, tan building with red brick accents. It was completed in 1908, and this was the original catalog house. And you can't see to the end of this building. It bends around the corner. It's quite long. And so the Stock Boys had to figure out an efficient and time-saving way to pick and pack all those products. And so we have it on very good authority with supportive photographs that they wore roller skates. So put in a good day's work, get a good workout. I like the combination. Those brown colored appliques is just a close-up look at the terracotta that I spoke about on the first building of today's tour. Let's talk about the gravity force and what's holding up this building. In this case, a reinforced concrete frame. First of its kind here in Chicago when it was completed in 1908, and further to that, the largest of its kind in the world at the time. Now, as we get to this section of the North Branch, we're reminded of Chicago's industrial past when this was an industrial working river. And what'll come into view pretty soon on your right is a small branch in the river. You're going to see a bridge, and just beyond that bridge, you're going to see a couple barges with particulate matter piled up on them. This is Yard 32, one of the top 5 busiest concrete producing yards here in the United States. And every day, 2 of those barges make their way via river to various construction sites throughout our city with the materials to make concrete on site. Now, why is that remarkable? If we took just one of those barges out of commission, we'd have to replace it with 140 semi-truck trailers, clogging up our already very busy expressways and streets. So I, for one, every time I see one of those floating by, I'm quite grateful. I'm often asked if this is still a working river, and yes, it is. Indeed, it needs to be. Those of you that were listening to the captain's opening remarks, we are floating on Federal Waterway. Our river connects to Lake Michigan, which connects to the other Great Lakes, and we have some pretty major barges that come through, ocean-going barges, and they need to be able to navigate our river. So anytime there's development on a river that it would in any way shape the shoreline, reduce the width of the river at any section, that developer has to get not only city approval and state approval, but federal approval. So we need to make sure that we can keep these waters easily to navigate for those large ocean-going vessels. Now, as the captain has indicated, I'm going to take 2 breaks. I'm going to take my first one now for 3 minutes. I encourage you to pop downstairs, grab some air conditioning, grab some water. You will hear me when I come on the mic no matter where you are on the boat, so you won't miss a thing. So I'll see you in a moment.
Can you hand me one of those water signs?
Wow, 100% yes.
The pylons that were totally down to like water level.
So I think the construction.
Thank you. Yeah.
Didn't they just knock something
I don't
down
think
over
this,
here?
I mean,
That's
this
the
is
old
quite
Tribune printing facility. So this big construction site.
My viewers think the
Putting a new
speaker is
casino.
annoying.
Oh no. How many viewers do you have?
That might be the sound of that.
Huh?
Oh, there's a contemporary.
She's talking about the architecture of Chicago.
Yeah, that's the first big, biggest
They're not like faking it, pretending it's on the water or something like a lot.
Wait, can you share the stream?
The sales force and then the wine glass. Had the finished book.
Sandusky, Chicago, Sandusky, where the new country used to be. So they got you that tree. You got the Perkins. Anyway, it's a great big manufacturing for cars.
I mean, I know. I just wanted to know.
Directions they get where ships for the car parts.
If you haven't already, make sure to like and subscribe.
And the light is setting here.
What do you think of this?
It's fun.
And the
Liking it?
I'm loving it. Would have been cool to do at night. We didn't think of that.
At least you can see it, the architecture better.
Yeah, it's so fun. Are you doing okay? Do you need to go inside?
what people say
It's cold.
is
Okay.
the internet.
Maybe a cup of ice.
Potato salad.
Do you need to go? Do you want to go check out the downstairs of the boat and I'll
Yeah.
save the seats?
Can you?
Well, no, show your viewers the downstairs part of the boat.
We're going downstairs. If new is since 2016, then yeah, I guess I'm pretty new. The whole boat is shaking. There's a lot of people down here. They must not like the heat. There's kayakers. Yeah, this is very shaky on my feet. You guys better change that no to a yes.
Hello, everyone. I am back. I hope everyone had a chance to
This is the downstairs of a boat. Currently doing a tour.
thank you for whoever is producing this cloud cover. We'll take it. We are going under quite a few bridges during our tour today. Sadly, I did not have time to speak to most of them. But we will speak to the next two that are coming up. One in the closed position. Taking the railway.
A lot of people are down here because there's AC.
One in the open position.
Hello.
First, on the 19 is Alexander Bravo, and the second one, 208.
Wait guys, spam the hearts. Spam the hearts.
These are two of the few remaining.
That means to click the heart button a bunch of times fast.
Security simply means when it opens and closes, it does so in one piece.
Oh, we got a 50-50.
And if we double it, we do a French dance. And S2 is French for seesaw.
Hopefully the yes becomes a 75%.
Now the railway bridge.
Yeah.
Stuff that says zero.
Bringing in raw materials directly into a factory, emptying it out, and spinning those cars to finished product. So a very efficient setup along with busy industrial labor. Now, the road bridge is no longer in use, but it is closed and reopened once a year for safety inspections. It's an iconic part of the Chicago skyline.
The spicy
Can I get the Liars Amalfi? Oh wait, I was right here.
No, it's still. Oh, spritz can?
Yeah.
You should get like a soda.
Where's the soda? Do you have iced tea? Okay, can I have sweet iced tea?
So we've just re-entered the confluence because of the configurations that are going to come together. And before we head down for part of our south branch, let's take a look at the building that's currently straight ahead of the boat. Soon to be on your right. This is classy facade and V-shaped base. Anything else on the grab?
Do you need a little simple syrup or something?
Yeah, wait, do you have simple syrup? Okay, thank you.
And this building is such an engineering wonder on the top of it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Direction. So first and foremost, another consideration when you're designing skyscrapers is the size of the area I have to work with
Thank you.
This is called the aspect ratio. Now this building is like a 10-to-1 ratio. This building has a 20-to-1 ratio. That means it's a very tall skyscraper standing on a tiny that piece of land that was deemed undevelopable for almost 90 years. So what do they do? First and foremost, they use steel from Luxembourg. It's 40% stronger than typical US steel. In addition, there is a reinforced concrete core running up the center of the building, and its density or its strength is the highest of any core in any building here in Chicago.
Yeah.
Now that V-shaped base is not only
I will.
visually arresting,
Okay, now we're going back upstairs.
And once we pass over this bridge, you'll see the angle on the riverside opens up a bit of space to introduce another stretch of publicly accessible riverwalk.
Well, I'm in the middle.
And if you look up into the angled portion of the building, you'll see the designers gave you an opportunity for a boat
Why
sell.
don't you have that so you can have it later?
For our next building, shift over to your left, just beyond the bridge, the tall glassy building. That's the Bank of America Tower, 2020. Another Getch Partners project. This time it wasn't the size of the lot, but the shape. In this case, it's a trapezoid. So as you walk from the southern edge to the northern, it narrows. So they had to be pretty clever about how to design a building on such an odd-shaped piece of land, but still maximize the space above it. So once we pass under the bridge, you'll see the riverside facade. They could have just had a straight angled facade, but instead they have this kind of stepwise fashion.
Stuckwise.
Well, visually arresting, but more importantly, this delivers the equivalent of 14 corner offices per floor. So a lot of happy executives and fewer fights about who gets the corner office. You see those steel beams coming down in a pointed formation, making for an incredibly strong structure in terms of what it can support above it. And then compare this to what you would typically see for support columns being parallel. In this fashion, it really opens up the view for the people working inside.
Wow.
Our next building, stay on your left, just after the bridge, the massive tan stone building. This is our Civic Opera House, 1929, Graham, Anderson, Probst, and White. Another Art Deco beauty. Another feature of Art Deco, it often has ornamentation on the outside that gives you a hint as to what's happening on the inside. So if you look up to those little bump outs, we call them false balconies, you might be able to just make out the mass of comedy and tragedy. And that's because the performance space is just on the other side of this facade. Now you'll notice there's office space flanking the performance space on either side and above. And that's because the developer very cleverly thought there's no way an arts organization can support a building of this size. And he's thinking cash flow. Brilliant idea. Terrible timing. 1929 here in the United States, we had a market crash that led to the Great Depression, so he unfortunately lost his entire investment. Now fast forward to happier days. This is the home of our Chicago Civic Opera Company, the second oldest such company here in the United States.
Wow, wow, wow.
For our next buildings, let's shift over to your right. We're going to talk about the next 4 buildings all in a row. They're all by architect firm Skidmore, Owings and Merrill, and they're going to range from 1965 to 1983. So the first 2, nearly identical, mid-century modern, remember? Clean lines, monochromatic color, flat roof line, simple repeated shapes. Now, as you can see and hear, they had quite the gravity challenge to overcome, and that is, how do you build buildings above active rail lines without the vibrations from passing trains running up and shaking the frame of your building? Well, the solution was pretty simple and elegant and effective. Both of these buildings are standing on stilts. Those stilts straddle and completely clear the tracks with zero transfer of any kind of vibration, thus preventing any shaking. For our next building on your right with the white frame and the black glossy windows, that's the Fifth Third Bank Building. It is defying both gravity and wind force with a different type of frame called tube in tube. So this is a steel frame, which you've already talked about, with a concrete perimeter, so making for an incredibly strong and stable structure. Once we pass under this next bridge, you're going to see a black glass and steel box sticking out from the Fifth Third Bank. And on its side, you see some X's. That's actually 4 of our triangular trusses formed together to make those X's. And remember, triangular trusses create a column-free interior. That was important because the original function of this space was one of our earliest trading floors. And back then, the traders needed direct line of sight to initiate and complete the trades. So no column delivery was a good solution for this space. Just after this next bridge, you can look to your right. The beautiful curvy glass number, that is Gateway Plaza 4, a beautiful postmodern building. That curve in the facade, you guessed it, there's a small bend in the river right here. So it's giving a nod to that bend, and another example of contextualism, when some aspect of the design of a building gives a nod or pays homage to something in its context.
Pays homage.
If you look at its windows, particularly in the corners, you see they're kind of pinched. That creates a ripple effect in anything that's reflected in it, and that's a nod to the ripples on the surface of the Chicago River. Staying on your right, just after the bridge, the massive stone building with an 8-lane expressway running through it. This is our old post office, 1921, Graham, Anderson, Probst, and White. Now, when this was completed in 1921, it was the largest post office in the world. But Chicago wasn't anywhere near the largest city in the world, so why would we need such a big post office? Well, Mr. Montgomery Ward and all of his imitators were sending out a lot of packages. Now, as you can see from the signage, this building has gone through adaptive reuse. It is now commercial office space. Part of that conversion, they added a green roof and a new event space, and on that roof are a collection of beehives. Many people are surprised to hear that there are hundreds of beehives sitting on roofs all over Chicago. Just a small contribution to buildings, particularly those that have gone through adaptive reuse, contribution to sustainability.
Where bees live, that people made.
They made it for the bees? Oh, that's cool.
So they can
But just after this bridge to your left is a relatively new development on the river. It's just south of our main commercial district called the Loop.
Look at the plum.
When it's completed, it's going to deliver 5 new towers, 4,000 new residences. Now, another consideration when developing new spaces in a very congested city like Chicago is balancing 2 important needs: density and openness. Density, because it's kinder to the earth and more economical, and you get those with tall, skinny structures. And openness, makes a place welcoming to live in or work in, and thus trying to balance the openness and greenery of, say, the suburbs with the excitement and the accessibility of a city. Now, one way that this development is ensuring the openness portion, the towers are going to deliver the density, is in perpetuity. A minimum of 30% of the acreage must remain open, either green space or public plaza, thus delivering the openness imperative. If I asked the captain to pull the boat over to the right and we took about a 20-minute walk west, we would find ourselves at a very important historic location for Chicago. And that is the place where a spark turned into a flame that turned into the inferno, known as the Great Chicago Fire of October 1871. Now, Chicago had fires in the past, but nothing as ferocious as these fire and wind funnels called fire devils. If you look to your right, you see those white lampposts? Put 5 of those on top of each other. That's the size of the wall of flame and wind that was coming at people's homes and businesses. And the reason for the ferocity was just a really unlucky combination of factors. We were 3 months into a severe drought. There was a hot southwest wind blowing that day. 80% of all of our buildings downtown made completely of timber. And to add insult to injury, the watchman mistook the original location of the river, resulting in a 45-minute fire brigade delay. Now, all told, 300 Chicagoans perished, 18,000 buildings were destroyed. Everywhere you looked, to the right, to the left, behind you, or ahead of you, nothing but smoke and ash. Absolute devastation. But the fire handed Chicago the very rare opportunity to reinvent and rebuild itself into a world-class city. And the need to rebuild an entire city, we attracted the best architects, engineers, and entrepreneurs from around the world, and with them, their ideas to take on the forces of water, fire, gravity, and wind. Now, with all of that bad luck, we had one piece of good luck, which I'll tell you about in a moment. But for now, look to your left, to this gorgeous curvy stone structure with eyebrow-shaped windows. This is River City by Bertrand Goldberg, and he was a student of Mies. Now, while Mies van der Rohe has never been at a right angle he doesn't like, you can tell his student really likes curves. So he used reinforced concrete for his frames. Now, when this was in development, there was nothing but commercial development in this entire area. And Bertrand, a bit ahead of his time, thought people should live and work near where they live and play, near where they work. So if you worked in the Loop, this was a pretty good location. But he knew to attract people, he had to design a lot of amenities in what he called a city within a city. So besides the beautiful private marina at its base, there's shops and services, there's a daycare, a beautiful big open atrium on the inside. So a ways to get people to come to a different part of the city and live in a sustainable tower. Now back to that one piece of good luck, and that was timing. The fire was 1871. The steel frame innovation came on the scene in 1885. Shortly thereafter, Chicago found itself the birthplace of the modern steel frame skyscraper. And just a little over 100 years after this entire landscape was nothing but smoke and ash, Chicago found itself home to the world's tallest building. So if you look to your left, soon to be in front of us, to the tall, dark, and handsome black tower with the 2 white antennae, that is Chicago's Willis Tower, born Sears Tower. A local art critic said that while Chicagoans spell Willis W-I-L-L-I-S, we pronounce it Sears. It was completed in 1974. Bruce Graham, architect, Fazar Khan, engineer, with the firm Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill. So how did they achieve never before seen heights, and at those heights, never before felt wind forces and gravity forces? Well, the credit is given to Fazar Khan, the engineer, for what's called a bundled tube construction. So rather than thinking of this as one building, think of it as 9 steel and glass tubes that have been bound together in like a tic-tac-toe fashion, a 3x3. And because they're contiguous or next to each other, they're self-supporting. And in addition to that, there are several bands that go around the building, almost like belts. And so it made for an incredibly strong structure able to handle both the gravity and wind forces at those new heights. Now, if you look at the top of the building, that very recognizable crown, those 9 towers rise to 4 different levels. And what does that do? It gives the wind a little less square footage to push against, and it also splits and greatly reduces the pressure of those wind forces hitting the building at that height. Now, this building held the world's tallest crown for about 25 years. I think it's still in the top 25. But since then, it has received another accolade that we are equally proud of. And that is, you are looking at a top tier or platinum level LEED certified building. And that's leadership in energy and environmental design. And those are certifications given to buildings based on their sustainable use of water, electricity, materials, and the like. Now, in 2022, they wrapped up a 3-year renovation to address, quite frankly, some of the challenges of the original building. And it was really an energy hog. But when you're dealing with a building of this sheer size, you make one small change, it makes a huge difference. So I'll give you an example of one of the changes. They introduced low flow water taps. And in 1 year and every year thereafter, they save the equivalent amount of water for you to fill up your bathtub 18,000 times. So a few small changes in a structure of this size delivers a huge impact in terms of sustainability. Now, I'm going to speak more about this building when we get a little bit closer to it. But for now, let's imagine you are the architect who receives the commission to design a building that's going to stand right next to the iconic Willis Tower. You're not going to try to imitate it, so why not try to stand out? So take a look at that building just in front of the Willis Tower, the light pink salmony colored building. This is 311 South Wecker, 1990 KPF. And rather than black steel and glass, they imported a beautiful pink granite for their facade from Texas. Rather than rectangular steel and glass, you're looking at an octagonal building standing on a rectangular base. So a triangular base, excuse me. So it couldn't be any more different than its neighbor just behind it. Now for our next building, look to your right, look inland about 4 buildings and look up. You're going to see a building with a statuette on top of its pointy roofline. This is our Chicago Board of Trade, 1930 Halliburton and Root, another Art Deco beauty. Now that statuette, that's Ceres. She is the goddess of agriculture. And remember, Art Deco buildings, ornamentation on the outside to give you a hint as what's happening on the inside. And indeed, the first products traded on the trading floor were soybean, corn, and wheat. And that statuette is by Illinois artist John Storrs. Staying on your right, moving in towards the river. See that black, glassy building with the gray balconies that are kind of scattered all over its facade. We asked the architects at Perkins & Will why that arrangement for the balconies. They're usually all kind of lined up in a neat row. And they said they wanted it to reflect the kinetic, frenetic energy of all the traffic running by on the 8-lane expressway below it. So another example of contextualism, when some aspect of the design of a building gives a nod to its context. Now, as we get closer to the Willis Tower, I think you can start making out some of those 9 bundled tubes. I'm often asked who is brave enough to wash all 16,100 windows, and that would be nobody. So we have robots to do that. They go up and down the facades in tracks, and they, when they're not working, they live up on the roof line. Now, just after we pass under this bridge, I want you to look at the riverside facade of the Willis Tower. And look all the way up to the top. You might be able to make out 4 glass boxes. Now, that is our observatory, the Sky Deck. It's the tallest sky deck in North America. On a clear day like today, you can see 5 states, 200 miles in every direction. Now, show of hands, how many of you like heights? Okay, there's like 7 of us. Okay, so while most of you are looking out into the beautiful horizon, the 7 of us are going to step into those glass boxes and look all the way down. It is extraordinary. Now, those boxes were added a little bit later And our robots aren't clever enough to work around them. So the glass boxes are built on rails. They get pulled inside. They lets the robot go past it and take care of the outside pane, and plain old human beings do the rest of the glass so all of you can see out. So folks, since one of our themes is wind today, I would be remiss if I did not address an urban myth. Some of you may know that Windy City is one of our nicknames. Many people think it's because of the breezes that come off the lake or the prairie. And while, of course, we do have breezes here, that's not the origination of the nickname. In the mid to late 1800s, we were the fastest growing city in the world. What does a fast growing city need? They need capital. So our politicians and our businessmen were making many trips to New York to try to raise that capital and to promote and boast the greatness of our city, trying to encourage anyone who would listen to bring your money, your talent, and both, and you would be handsomely rewarded. Oh, at the same time, we were also competing with New York to be the host of the Columbian Exposition. So we were even cheeky enough to take out ads in New York newspapers, magazines, and billboards touting the greatness of Chicago. So my friends, the wind in Windy City has nothing to do with our weather and everything to do with the hot air coming out of the mouths of our politicians and our businessmen.
I never knew that.
Now with that, I'm going to take my second 3-minute break. I encourage all of you to do the same, and I will see you in a moment.
I did too. Helmet wants to go stand on those 4 boxes and look down. I'm ready to do it after lunch. Yeah, I've heard it before, right? You guys can do it. I'll watch you out there. Helmet here.
You can't?
Do you want to do it or not?
I don't know. Let's find out. After lunch, we had other programs too. We're supposed to have a
Oh, okay.
but we can do it at midnight because we don't have anything.
Okay.
And it might be what's supposed to be.
Sounds good. Yeah, I knew about it. They know I was going to mention it, you guys.
Oh, yes.
The building where you could look down, it's kind of scary.
She said it's in this year's law.
We'll have to find out. I'm not sure. I don't know. I think that's what he said.
Who's on? How many people on your stream?
Tell them I say they must be doing.
3.
Do we know them?
No. We know one. Grandma.
This is good. She gets a virtual tour.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the bond market guy who does it.
I love River City.
Yeah, this city has so much character. I'm surprised they didn't talk at all about the mafia. That was a huge problem.
Maybe that's coming up. Maybe that's kind of fun. Want to talk about what's good about the city, but we'll talk about crime. I guess. I don't know why they didn't bring it up. Oh, is it?
Oh, look. That's a really nice jet ski.
Can you
That's another big bar. After this.
That is a huge ugly H spot. Have a hard time. A gross spot that you get when you're old.
Washington Boulevard.
From the sun. For money.
Okay, folks, I am back.
It's the first time.
And if you look to your left and up, we have another view of 150 North Riverside. And let's talk about the wind force, because this building brought, for the time, a first ever technology for dealing with the wind force called mass tune dampers. So think of it as a large swimming pool, in fact 12 swimming pools at the top of this building. And when the wind presses against the building, the water sloshes
See
in
this
the opposite
building right here,
direction,
how the bottom looks
thus
like a martini
dampening or
glass, like a
reducing
triangle?
the sway.
Oh yeah.
Now, I already talked about how hard this building is working to standing up
You guys missed that
to
last time.
gravity on that tiny piece of land.
Oh,
And then
yeah.
they went ahead and added all the water
the
weight
building
of
she's
those
talking
12 dampers on the top of it. So they decided it better do double duty, and it does.
Yes.
So it's backup waterproofing. You've got water, you've got gravity, why not use it?
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, see how it's looking.
Now, straight ahead of the boat, across the confluence, there's a tall, glassy building. That's the Salesforce Tower, Peggy Clark 2020. It is sitting on historic Wolf Point. That is the location of Chicago's very first neighborhood. The first structure in that neighborhood was a fur trapper's lodge, quickly followed by a tavern, and then because of the tavern, a church, followed by some shops, and then finally some residences. So that you're looking at our very first neighborhood. Now, once we pass under the Lake Street Bridge, for anyone who would like, I want to invite you to stand up, take a 360 look around when we're in the confluence. Notice how all the buildings reflect one another and reflect all the boats floating by on the river below. It's a very unique perspective
360.
on our city.
Oh, here, you can all you stand up and I'll
But I
get
have
out
to,
of your way.
I have to poo.
Oh,
So-
okay. Go ahead.
No.
Oh,
Because if I stand up, I fall.
You got to,
you're sitting that long way.
I know. Dang it, guys. You had to click yes, you're subscribed, not no, you're not subscribed.
For our next building, currently straight ahead of the boat, soon to be on your left, the massive tan stone building. That's the Mart, 1929, Graham, Anderson, Probst, and White. Now, this was the vision of local retailer Marshall Field, and it was meant to be wholesale showrooms, for he and his other retailers to purchase their wares. Another brilliant idea with terrible timing. Of course, 1929, market crash followed by the Great Depression here in the United States. Now, this changed hands in terms of ownership several times over the years. It almost met the wrecking ball, and gratefully it did not. Fast forward to today, the original vision for showrooms did come to pass. The first couple floors are showrooms for the interiors business, and above, office space,
What?
all the way up to those
Heads on the
beautiful
column.
roof lines. Now, if you look at the top few floors, you see those diamond-shaped copper appliques with chevrons kind of emanating out from them, a very typical Art Deco ornamentation. And this building glistens not only during the day, but also at night with Art on the Mart. Art on the Mart is the largest outdoor digital art display in the world. Happens every evening. If you Google Art on the Mart, you can confirm the time for tonight. It's also accompanied by music. So if you come down, I'd say either stand on Upper Wacker Drive or right here down on the Riverwalk and take in Art on the Mart. For our next building, stay on your left. The glassy steel building with Chicago Cut Steakhouse at its base. You're looking at another top-tier platinum level LEED certified building. And it was awarded to this building in part due to how it uses water. Now, all buildings have mechanicals. Mechanicals produce heat. The heat has to be removed. The easiest way to do that is with water. So with proper permission and permits, this building takes water from the river, purifies it, uses it to cool down its mechanicals, returns the water to the river better than it found it. So great for the river, fantastic for the environment, phenomenal for the owner of this building who would otherwise have to procure and transport water from another source. For our next building, look straight ahead and up into the distance. You see that very tall blue-green glass tower. Now move your eyes over 3 to the right, and you're going to see a dark green building with a gold crown. This is the Pendry, 1929, the Burnham Brothers. It's the sons of our friend Daniel Burnham. Today it's a high-end hotel. Started out life as the Midwest headquarters for the Carbide and Carbon Company. And when the executives met with the Burnham Brothers to tell them what they wanted for the building, They said, quote, they wanted the building to be a perpetual advertisement for the success of their enterprise. They were kind of fancy people. And they added, make it look like a champagne bottle. So think of a dark green champagne bottle with a gold foil on top. You're looking at 24 karat gold there, albeit only about as thick as a piece of plastic wrap. And it's very unusual for Art Deco to have a colored facade. It's usually a sand color, so that deep dark green, very, very unique. If you find yourself on South Michigan walking by the Pendry, do pop in and check out the lobby. It is spectacular. Shifting over to your left, just beyond this next bridge, the Corn Cob building, soon to reveal a twin just behind it. This is another Bertrand Goldberg city within a city, this time called Marina City. Now, like River City, it's got a beautiful private marina at its base. And in addition to the residences, it has shops and services, restaurants, office space, music space. Now, obviously, he achieves density through the towers. One way he achieved openness was the shape of the residences. Every resident is a pie shape. You walk in at the point of the pie, and the sides of your unit flare out in either direction, making for a very welcoming and open space. The curvature of those balconies allow for you to walk out onto your balcony, and even if your neighbor is on theirs, you can't see them. So again, a bit more openness and invitation for those spaces. Staying on your left, just after the bridge, the steel and glass AMA Plaza. 1971, the office of Mies van der Rohe. Now, this was Mies's final commission before his passing. Started out life as the Midwest headquarters for IBM and had to house both people and mainframe computers. Those of you old enough to remember the size of mainframe computers in the 1970s, they were like small suburban houses. They took up a lot of electricity, so energy efficiency was important for this building. It was $50 million in 1971, which was a lot of money, but they introduced a then brand new technology called double glazing for the windows. And that delivered a building 40% more efficient than other buildings of its kind. So they more than got the returns on their investments. If you look to your immediate left here at river level, I'm going to talk about this skyscraper when we're further out and you can see its entire profile. But for now, just take a look at those columns that are running around the perimeter. I'm going to speak to those when I explain how this building is standing up to gravity force.
Shrimp.
Staying on your left, another beautiful angle of the Wrigley building, displaying our oversized flag. That flag is put up 1 week before the 4th of July and stays up, I think, for 2 weeks. A lovely sight to be seen. And peeking out from behind it, across the street, look up to the building with a very elaborate crown.
Crown.
Top of building.
That's the Tribune. That's the Tribune Tower, original headquarters for the Chicago Tribune newspaper. Today, it's now high-end residences. 1925, Howells and Hood. Now, we would consider this neo-Gothic. Think of grand cathedrals in Europe as its inspiration. And it was the result of a worldwide design competition that only had one rule: design the world's most beautiful office building. So you can be the judge as to whether or not they delivered it. Now, if you find yourself walking by this building during your stay in Chicago, please check out the exterior first floor facade. It is embedded with hundreds of artifacts from buildings all around the world, and you might find one connected to a country that's meaningful to you and your family. Staying on your left, down here at river level, you see this low-lying glass cube. This is Apple Michigan Avenue, 2017, Foster and Partners. Look how lightly and respectfully the building is sitting on the former location of Jean-Baptiste Pontesauble's trading post. It's a different trading post of its kind today. The clear glass doesn't get in the way of you enjoying the historic buildings that surround it. And if you look at the corners, they're all rounded, just like the corners of all Apple products are rounded. So a little self-reference there.
Oh, look, there's NBC.
Staying on your left, look up to the building with a tall spire on its roof line and a colorful logo at the base of that spire. This is NBC Tower, 1989. Adrian Smith, when he was with Skidmore, Owings and Merrill. This is a beautiful postmodern nod to Art Deco. We call those Echo Decos. So it's emphasizing its height with those recessed dark green glass windows. It was also inspired by 30 Rockefeller in New York City. 30 Rockefeller is the headquarters for the NBC television station. Their logo is a peacock. There's a peacock on this building, so it's giving you a hint that the local NBC affiliate offices are within the building. So another example of when an Art Deco or an Echo Deco building has ornamentation on the outside that gives you a hint as to what's happening on the inside. For our next building, shift over to your right, just after the bridge. Look up to the beautiful multi-hued blue triple tower curvy beauty we call St. Regis Chicago 2020 Genie Gang of Studio Gang. This is Chicago's third tallest building. Mixed use is what we call it. Basically, we got a hotel at the bottom, high-end residences above. And those curvy towers were created by alternating frustrums. What the heck is a frustrum? So if you take a pyramid, slice off the top, that's a frustrum. And if you stack them in alternating patterns, you kind of get that shoulders and waist curves. But your eyes are playing tricks on you. There's not a single curve in this entire building. That's an optical illusion created by moving those glass panels ever so slightly in and out by inches. Now the gravity force that you see before you is nothing short of remarkable, and that is that center tower. The only thing holding it up are the two towers on either side of it. So there's infrastructure below that center tower, so they had no place to put any kind of a support beam. Now, one of the hallmarks of Genie Gang design, particularly for skyscrapers, is they should be porous connectors rather than barriers. I'm going to tell you how this building achieves that vision. If you look to your right, here down on river level, you see some orange playground equipment. To the right of that equipment, there's an opening in the fence. If you walk through that opening, you can walk underneath the middle tower, and you'll be deposited on a beautiful 6-acre park. Likewise, if you're on Upper Wacker Drive, you can walk or drive under that center tower, and you'll be deposited on a beautiful open public plaza. So two ways that this building very mindfully connects the neighborhood behind it with the river and the river walk in front of it, not impeding flow, certainly adding beauty to the neighborhood, but not getting in anyone's way. I'm going to speak more to this building when we're further out in the turning basin and you can see its entire profile. But for now, shift your attention over to the left. Just on the other side of that roadway, the black steel and glass curvy number. This is Lake Point Tower 1968, Chivalrite Heinrich. Now, if you could see this building from above, you would know that it's a 3-leaf clover. Now, the original design was a 4-leaf clover, because why not? Well, with 4 leaves, you can see into each other's homes. So they didn't think that was going to be a good selling point. So they went back to the 3-leaf clover. And as you might imagine, delivers uninterrupted views of the lake, the city, and the river from every single unit. So highly marketable. Now, you should know by now, those curves are not just for aesthetics. They are purposeful. You see that building standing out on its own. Nothing to block the winds coming off of the lake. So those curves help split and redirect the wind, greatly reducing sway. Now, staying on your left, just after the bridge, you'll see a very large structure coming into view with a Ferris wheel on it. This is Chicago's Navy Pier, 1916, Charles Frost. Now, the Ferris wheel was first introduced at the Columbian Exposition, so apropos for our pier to have a beautiful one on its western edge. In the western part of the pier, you've got, as you can see, rides and attractions. As you walk down the pier, you're going to find a Shakespeare theater, a children's museum, loads of shops, restaurants, and bars. If you make it all the way to the end, and then you're going to have to walk all the way back, you're done with steps for the day. So that's the good news. But to reward yourself halfway, if you get all the way to the end, look for a sign that says offshore, and you will find yourself at the world's largest rooftop bar and restaurant. It's all glass enclosed. On a day like today, those glass walls will be retracted, letting the breezes through, and a really beautiful view of our lake and our river. Now, I spoke earlier about how much we Chicagoans admire Montgomery Ward, and another reason is he was the watchdog of the lakefront. The 1909 Plan of Chicago called for our lakefront to remain forever free and clear of commercial development. That didn't stop developers from trying, and every time they did, Montgomery Ward, with his own money, took the city to court. He did so 4 times, and he won all 4 times. So thanks to Mr. Ward, we have this beautiful 28-mile, 26-beach, fully accessible, undeveloped lakefront with adjoining green spaces, for which we owe him a debt of gratitude. It's a very unique natural amenity for a U.S. city. Now the captain is going to position the boat in the perfect position for you to take in our beautiful skyline, and we'll pause for a moment to give you an opportunity to take some photographs, capture some memories from our time together.
It's gonna be this way, baby. Dominic, can you look for a second?
And if you look either to your left or behind you and up, you'll see we've got the Goodyear blimp who's come out to say hello to us. I imagine probably taking some filming of our NASCAR races that are happening here in Chicago.
Say cheese. Thank you, baby.
Instead of a fire truck, they have a fireboat.
Yeah. Here, let's stand up and take a selfie. You want to? Let me take this.
It's hiding in the window.
Oh, here. Everyone to look at me together. Oh, yeah, cool.
So from this perspective, if you look up to the westernmost tallest tower of the St. Regis building, you see at the 83rd floor something seems to be missing, but that's by design. Now the original design of this building all three towers were just a little skinnier. And with that original design, it stayed within the acceptable range of sway by using one technology for wind force, and that's those mass tune dampers I spoke about earlier, those big pools of water. Then someone had the idea, let's increase the size of the towers just by a few inches. But a few inches times all those floors times 3 threw it outside of the acceptable range of sway. So they had to add a second technology, and that's what you're looking at, creatively called a blow-through floor, because the wind blows through it.
This
So there's
swervy
nothing
building.
in that space, with the exception of a metal core where the mechanicals can run up to those upper units. And some of you may be thinking, that's pretty valuable space to be empty, but I guarantee you add up the square footage of all those added inches, it far exceeds the space you're looking at. When you ever have a question about some choices made in architecture, follow the money. Now that building is standing in what we call a planned urban development. It's called Lakeshore East. Part of many efforts on the part of the city over the years to encourage people to move back downtown. We had a big exodus out to the suburbs in the 60s, and encouraging people not to wait till they're retired, to raise families downtown, and as Bertrand Goldberg had originally implored people to do, to live and play near where they worked. So if you work in our main business district called the Loop, and you lived in Lakeshore East, you'd probably have about a 20-25 minute walk each way. So quite an easy commute and a sustainable one.
Don't feed the bird.
That's a cool bird. I'm gonna take pictures.
Now for our final building of today's tour, look straight ahead and up the glassy blue tower with the multiple tiers. This is Trump International Hotel and Tower, 2002, by Chicago-based Adrian Smith when he was based at the Skidmore, Owings and Merrill Company. This is Chicago's second tallest building, another mixed use, hotel at the bottom, high-end residences above. And it delivered a technology that was brand new at the time that is now used in what we call super tall buildings all over the world. And it's called core and outrigger. So there's a reinforced concrete core running up the center of this building. From that core, there are arms or outriggers that reach out, grab onto those columns I pointed out earlier. So making for a very stable and strong structure, taking on those wind and gravity forces. Those of you that ski, you know the safest way to stand on slippery snow and ice is to plant your poles on either side of you. That's exactly what this building is doing. Now, we have very spongy soil here in Chicago, and you take on a skyscraper of that weight. If we didn't really reinforce below it, it would sink. So below the foundations of our tallest buildings, you have to go all the way down to bedrock for that stability. And they do that with something called caissons. A caisson is simply a large steel tube filled with concrete. Now you can see from here, this building has multiple tiers. And Adrian Smith is a very respectful designer. He pays attention to particularly the historic buildings that are neighboring any building that he's designing, and he likes to give them a nod in some way, shape, or form. So you see those tiers are at different heights. The lowest tier lines up with the roof line of the Wrigley building, the very first building we spoke about today. And another one of those line up with the roof line of the AMA Plaza, the final commission of Mies van der Rohe. So two nods that Adrian gives to those buildings and those architects. Adrian Smith is the current architect of record for the world's tallest building in the world, the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. And rather than throwing out feet or meters, let's do a comparison. Take a look at the super tall structure behind me. Don't add 25%, don't add 50%, add nearly 100%. So the tallest building in the world is twice the height of Chicago's second tallest building. Well, he didn't want to rest on his laurels, so he and his partner Gordon Gill are trying to best themselves with Jeddah Tower in Saudi Arabia. If that project goes to completion, it will not be twice the height of the building behind me. It will not be 2.5 times the height. It will be nearly 3 times taller than the super tall you see before you. Pretty hard to wrap your head around. All this to say, while the tallest buildings in the world aren't currently being built in Chicago, they are being designed in Chicago. Apropos, given our contributions to all things skyscraper technology throughout the years.
Saudi Arabia.
Now, as we pass under the Columbus Bridge, head back to the dock. I hope today's experience helped you better appreciate Chicago's extraordinary journey from Riverside Trading Post to the stunning skyline you see before you today. The mission of the Chicago Architecture Center is to help people discover why design matters. And you just received a visual feast of that design as it took on the forces of water, fire, gravity, and wind. Now, if you enjoyed yourself today, I've got a couple tips. If you are hungry for more, jump onto architecture.org. We've got scores more tours and events that celebrate Chicago architecture. And if you have time during your visit to Chicago, anytime in the next 2 weeks, why not visit the CAC itself? We're located on Upper Wacker Drive in that measy and black steel and glass building. Show them your ticket from today's tour. You'll get a discounted entry to see our exhibits and displays and a sweet little architecture-focused gift shop. Now, as a volunteer docent, we do not take tips, but we do take reviews, and we love them. So do us a favor, help support our nonprofit mission. Jump onto TripAdvisor and give the CAC River Cruise with Patricia a shout out, because that's how many of our first-time guests find us. So with that, will you please join me in thanking the captain and the crew for a beautifully smooth cruise today. And if you will please remain seated until the captain has indicated it's safe to disembark, I will be dockside under the umbrella to take any questions you may have. Now, I was born here in Chicago, spent the majority of my career traveling the world, only to find there's no place like home. It has been my pleasure to share a slice of my city with all of you here today. My name is Patricia, and I wish you a fantastic time in my sweet home, Chicago.
Everybody
the
go to
city
TripAdvisor,
that's second
rate them
to
5
none.
stars. Should I end it?
I you can end it for now.
Okay, bye guys. I'll see you in the next stream. Make sure to subscribe with all notifications.
This is like the best.